Ross King is a multi-award-winning television presenter, actor and writer, renowned for his roles as the LA correspondent for ITV breakfast programmes Lorraine and Good Morning Britain, as well as for his versatility in stage, screen, TV and radio. And Ross is on the line with us here from Hollywood. How are you today?
I'm good. I have no idea who that was you just described. He sounds a heck of a guy. I'd like to meet him. It sounds very talented. Yeah. It sounds like something somebody's manager wrote.
It does, doesn't it? A lot of people in this country, anyway, know you best for being the LA correspondent on Lorraine and Good Morning Britain. So what is it like covering the entertainment scene in Hollywood?
It's absolutely bonkers, Toby. Absolutely mad. That's the only way I can describe it. But it is exhilarating. It's fun. As long as you don't take it too seriously, you just get a great laugh about it all. Because that's the thing. It is not that serious. And I know sometimes people take it seriously. And there are sides of the business, obviously, you do have to take a little more seriously. But in the main, you know what? It's fun. And as a boy from Glasgow, from Knightswood in Glasgow, to end up in Hollywood, and I still get the same feelings that I always did when I was a kid. And that's what I think it's nice for me. I'm hoping that also that translates to the viewers and to the listeners, because I'm just as excited. You know, this week I was interviewing Nicolas Cage. Yes. And, you know, I'm just excited to get in the car, to drive to the Four Seasons Hotel. You know, I come out my house. If I look out just now, I can see the Hollywood sign. Wow. You know, I see it from all the rooms. I get in the car. You know, I drive to the Four Seasons in Beverly Hills. I go and interview Nicolas Cage. And I'm always very aware of the fact that, you know, even when I was a kid, you know, if you saw somebody famous, you know, in a restaurant or saw them going into a place, you know, how excited I was. And I never take it for granted that not only now do I get to meet some of these people that I've admired, I get to meet them. I get to sometimes, you know, have a photograph taken with them, and I get to chat with them, and I get to ask them questions that I wanted to ask. So I'm very aware of how privileged I am and my role in things. And also I'm hopefully then that conduit between people who don't have that privilege and myself who does. So I'm always very cognizant of it. I understand it, and I never take it for granted, and I never get bored by it. So that's the other thing. I love what I do, and I love it as much today as I did when I started off as a 15, 16-year-old in hospital radio, and then in Radio Clyde in Glasgow.
I suppose it's quite important for you to never get bored of it, because you've been doing it for quite a while, and yes, I don't think there's anybody that you haven't interviewed, really.
No, I mean, it is ridiculous. And when sometimes people say, who have you not interviewed? And then I think, well, oh no, I did. And then, oh yeah, no, I interviewed them. Yeah, no, I did actually once. And then, so it is ridiculous. But again, just so lucky to have been in the business for such a long time, to have met so many different people. And yeah, again, it's just never taking it for granted, Toby. That's the thing of just enjoying it all, having fun with it, not taking the business, not taking yourself too seriously. You know, I think, you know, all my friends would know that, and perhaps people who've been kind enough to watch me on the TV will know that I certainly don't take myself seriously at all.
And is there a particular person you've interviewed that's maybe left an impact on you, or it was a particularly memorable interview?
Oh my goodness me, there's so many that have been memorable from all different reasons. You know, you'll have ones where it's people that you've admired. You know, people like, say, Dolly Parton, who ends up just being who you want her to be. Then you have other people that are great and who just get it. Yeah. You know, people like George Clooney, who you can just lob the ball to and he just knocks it out of the park, because he gets where you're coming from, and then he takes, you know, it's almost like feeding a great comedian a line, and they take the line and then hit the punchline. And that's what people like George do, because they've been around a long time. And then you have people like Julia Roberts, who doesn't suffer fools gladly. And in an interview can be quite, she can be quite, testy is maybe not quite the right word, but she's, you've got to be on your game. That's a simple thing. And, she will not just go blandly. She will actually question things or say, well, why did you say that? Or what's behind that? And which is great, because I love that as well. And she's just, again, someone who's been around. So, yeah, there's so many different people for all different reasons. And again, just lucky.
Yeah. When you have somebody like that maybe is quite hard to win over, how do you get them on side and make them relaxed and all that? Especially when it's somebody quite high profile where, maybe not with you because you've been doing it for so long, but some people might find quite intimidating.
I think, and this is maybe sounds strange to some people, that it's like yourself. You're very engaging, very chatty. You immediately feel at home. You don't feel under attack or anything at all like that. And I think it's hard. It's funny. Nicolas Cage and I were just talking about this just this week, which is that now in the world of sound bites and screen grabs and clickbait, people are really reticent to talk openly sometimes, and I completely understand that. And, we were having that conversation, and he said that even though he's been around a long time, he is aware of it. But he said, no, I still just want to be honest. I still want to give honest answers. And if people take them and chop them up and make it sound something different, or make it like a different answer to a different question, that's like their problem. But he's got a new movie out, which at one point, it basically focuses on a man who appears in people's dreams, and he becomes famous for no reason other than he appears in everybody's dreams. and then he gets, basically, it's cancel culture as well. And I think everyone's very aware that people want to cancel people. And so I think everyone is a little bit wary of things, but that's just the way that life is now, and the way that the business is, which in many respects is a shame. And again, you feel for comedians who are always treading very carefully, or have to.
And you yourself started out in theatre and in film and television. So do you think your background there benefits you when you're interviewing people? It maybe gives you some extra insight that other people wouldn't have?
Yeah, definitely, Toby. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's a great question, for sure, because having been in that other side of things, I understand how they feel. And also, if, say, for example, there's a particular topic that is very now, and that they themselves know that probably somebody will want to talk about it. And also, if you imagine, sometimes for these stars, like Nicolas Cage the other day, they're doing junkets, which are called junkets, film junkets. So basically, they're stuck in a room in a hotel, and all these different people are coming in from all over the world, or in Zoom calls, as a lot of them are at the moment. And a lot of them are asking the exact same question. And then if it is something that's been very topical, they're going to ask them about it. And my way is that we're all in the same boat. We understand, that I probably have to talk about that. They understand that I have to talk about that. But it's how you get into it and how you do it. And, some journalists, because I've been in the other end of it as well, is that they do that thing where you'll have a really lovely chat for a few minutes. And then it's kind of like, oh, just before I go, can I ask you? And then bang. So I think, I know that that's how they think, because that's how I think as well. So quite often, if there is, let's say it's subject A, that, you can bring it into the conversation, and maybe even bring it in early and say, here you are stuck in this hotel room, and I'm presuming that today all anyone's wanted to talk to you about is subject A. How have you been dealing with that? Because sometimes it's nice to get an insight into them saying, well, yeah, because, I'm trying to think, if I say this, does it mean that? If I say this, does it mean that? And so you get that. And then there's a degree of empathy that you have, that you've built up. And then also, if you very obviously are making it clear that you're not out to try and trap someone or get them to say something that they don't want to say, it's a chat. It's like you and I were having at the moment. It's a conversation rather than, and I'm not saying saying that it's the wrong way to do it. It's just not a way that I do it. I don't go in and I don't have like, a piece of paper, like a big question card, and I'm asking the question. And then, while they're answering it, I'm looking down going, my next question is, and as we all know, you can miss a lot. I mean, it's fine to have a rough structure. I always say, and some things you go, I really would like to talk about that at some point, but equally allow yourself to amble off at times. Because that's sometimes where you get the nuggets, where you stumble upon some. It's like simple thing. It's like going off the beaten path, and suddenly you discover some beautiful beach that you didn't realize was there, and that's what happens. And I think sometimes when people go into interviews, they're very set. But also, I can see it as well that you'll say you walk in an interview and there's a car drives up or something, and you remark upon the car, and the person immediately goes, yeah, well, that car, that car kind of looks like the one that featured in the movie and blah, blah, blah. And they do that whole bit where you're like, yeah, come on. I understand. We'll get back to that. And also, you can, in an interview, you can take charge as well. And you can say, look, I really want to talk about the movie. Or also, that if someone, that's what they're there for, then, right at the top, even talk about it, because then they'll settle a little bit because they've talked about what they feel that they're there to talk about. So it's varying degrees, varying techniques. I think it's also, listening to people and actually listening to what they're saying and then picking up on it. Because I remember one time, it was really funny when Benedict Cumberbatch was coming out here, and he was doing red carpets, but wasn't that well known. Obviously huge in Britain, but not that well known here. And we were having this chat, and it was really funny because he said to me, it's very unusual to have someone look at me while they're interviewing me and not look down at questions, and also not be looking over my shoulder to see who else is coming along. And a lot of you will actually see it sometimes if you look at red carpets. Now, listen, when it comes to the Oscars, you are on one of these crazy situations where it's like I could be talking to you at the moment, Toby, and saying, and I'm just glancing because suddenly I see Angelina Jolie come along or something like that. So you've got to be ready to then wrap things up and then make sure that you don't miss people. But, again, you can do it in a mannerly way, I think is another big thing that, it's just being respectful and being mannerly and just being decent.
And it's really important, as you say, to listen to the answers because they could give you some absolute gold to follow up on. Like they could finish an answer with, and that night I killed a man. And if you weren't listening, you go to the next question and people would be like, what? And also, they might have already answered your next question. So you got to pay attention.
Yes, I've seen that. And I've seen it with, experienced broadcasters as well. And I've gone, exactly. They just said there and you just missed out on it. And also, the other thing is that, and I'm sure you know this too, is that when you finish, if you've asked the question and they've given you an answer, if you leave a pause sometimes, and I learned this from a wonderful interviewer called Sheila Duffy. And when I was a kid at local radio, I would technically operate for her show. I'd be, recording it and all the rest of it, making sure the mics were all good. And she had this wonderful thing where, with it being radio, she would laugh silently. So, you would say something, she'd go. So you didn't have that terrible problem of editing things and there was huge laughter. Which was great. And then also, she would just leave gaps. I said to you, what's the best day you've ever had in your life? And you say, the day I did this. And if you just leave a little pause or a gap, people tend to fill the gap, especially if they're experienced, because you don't want there to be dead air or this, you want more. And sometimes, again, that's when you will get lovely little nuggets because people will fill the space and they'll give you an answer and then give you another answer and keep talking. Good try. You were listening to my answer.
Yes. Now, as I mentioned, you kind of started out in theatre and television, and your first stage appearance was actually at the age of 4. So
Yes.
how did that early exposure to stage influence your kind of later work, if at all?
Yes, it made me realize that I was a show off, that I was a sucker for doing anything on a stage which got a laugh. Because if I remember rightly, I tripped and fell, and then bounced back up and went something like "ta-da!" and got this big laugh. And I remember thinking, "Oh, I like that. I like that applause and laughter." So I think that was a big thing that started then. And yeah, I was so lucky that my mum and dad were both very musical. Mum played the piano, dad played various instruments, and that I was that little kid that got pushed out at weddings to sing with a band. And so you were a performer. I remember doing impressions of the teachers, and then doing impressions for my aunts and uncles, and to varying degrees of success, and then doing impressions of them. And so there's just always been that performer, and I think that came from mum and dad, even though they weren't in show business at all. I always laugh when I remember I was going to be a footballer, or not going to be a footballer, and saying to my dad that I decided that I wasn't going to play football, I was going to go into show business. And he was so supportive and said, "We will do whatever we can to help, but simply we don't know Coco the Clown, so we don't really have an inside track for you." So yeah, I had to find Coco the Clown.
Yeah. And you've appeared in Hollywood blockbusters and independent films, as well as stage productions like The Rocky Horror Show and Dick Whittington. So how did you and do you choose the roles that you're going to appear in?
Oh, wow. Sometimes you get a choice, not often as well. I mean, I think if you're a huge star, then, you do get to pick and choose. The Rocky Horror Show, playing the role of Frankenfurter, was something that I'd never dreamed of doing. I never dreamt that I would ever be asked to do it. And I took over from Jason Donovan in it, who's a great pal. And, we laughed. I remember one day, so I was taking over from him. And if anyone's seen the Rocky Horror Show, if they haven't, and the character of Frankenfurter, you just look it up just now. And there may well be a picture of me as Rocky, Frankenfurter, who's a sweet transvestite. Just look it up. It's quite a picture that will definitely put you off your tea, guaranteed for weeks to come, years to come. But it's so funny that one of the shows when I was getting into the show, so the idea was that I would sort of mirror everything that Jason was doing, but off stage, so we knew the quick changes, we knew where I had to be in the stage, etc., like that. And it was funny that we were both standing backstage looking at each other like this mirror image of Frankenfurter. And I remember Jace going, "Oh, mate, do you remember when we were like young and blonde and like, in children's TV?" And that was the first time that I'd met Jason, was in Jersey, and he was doing a tour there. And I was doing a kids' TV show on a Saturday morning called 8:15 from Manchester. And it was just so funny. They were going, how your careers take you in so many different directions. But the great thing for me was that it really, really challenged me. And I do like challenges because, again, as you get older and when you've worked in the business for a long time, where I'm so lucky to have done that, is that you can become quite comfortable with things and don't do things. I remember I did a set at the Laugh Factory out here in Sunset Boulevard a few years ago, doing stand-up. And I host lots of things, I do gags, etc. But I would never say that I was a stand-up. But the owner of the club had said to me, "I'd seen you on TV, I think you're funny." And come and do a set. And I did a 15-minute set. I did two 50-minute sets that night, and that was great. And it takes you out of, I know the expression gets used a lot, out of your comfort zone, but it is good sometimes to actually push yourself out there and to push boundaries for yourself and to see what you can achieve, or sometimes what you can achieve. And again, sometimes there's nothing wrong. I always think when people talk about like my failed football career, But it's that interesting thing when you realize how good or how bad you're going to be sometimes at things. And there's no harm in going, do you know what? I can do that to that ability. And then I can't, and again, it was like me playing football and you go and have trials at these different places. And, you may have thought you were the best player in your team. And then you go and you realize it's a whole different level. And, I often have, chat, especially when I go home. And it's funny, sometimes people will say really nice things about when I was playing football. And I say, to anyone, just think, who was the best footballer at your school? There's always one normally. You go, blah, blah, blah. Ali McCoist, he was the best player at school. But what happened to them? And there are very few Ali McCoists. There's very, very few that people say, oh, yeah, whatever happened to him? And then it'll be all like you had a couple of trials at, Dundee United or something, or at Falkirk, and it didn't happen. And, that's when you realize how hard the business is. And also, I'm very aware of the fact that, there are not many jobs like mine, and I'm so fortunate to have it. And a lot of luck goes into that too.
You've done so many things. It's hard to describe what you do as a job because you've done theatre, television, radio as well. So on the subject of radio, how do you think the intimacy of radio broadcasting differs from your experiences in television? And do you maybe have a preference of the two?
No, weirdly enough, I don't have a preference. The reason I don't have a preference is because I enjoy whatever it is that I'm doing at the time, because I've seen so many people always believe the grass is greener on the other side. And sometimes there's not even grass on the other side, but everyone gets caught up in it. So when you're doing radio, people go, I want to do TV. And then they're doing TV. I want to do theatre. I'm doing films. I want to do theatre. I'm doing theatre. I want to do films. Yeah. As opposed to, hopefully if you're lucky, you get a chance to do all the different things, but also being aware of how things are different. And I had a great producer. I had two great producers when I first went into network TV at Granada. Rod Natkill, another friend, Richard, and they would say, just be aware that there's a different style for radio than there is for TV. Now, this is going back to obviously way before your days, Toby, yes. when radio was very, as we like Chris Moyles and I used to always laugh about how when you would jock it up, and it was 95 point great capital FM from the power, this is, the top of the Euston Tower, more blah, 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 blah. And it was all, and everything was about hitting the vocals on a record. And it was very much, hey, it's Ross the Boss, it's the king coming at you, it's the man with the tan, it's the blah, 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 high above in the Hollywood Hills and all that stuff. So when you went into TV, you had to realize that there was a difference. You could still have energy, but then equally as well, you can see people. And obviously radio is a lot different now because most radio stations have cameras, in their studios. But again, it's that thing of just hitting. That there's a funny thing, and I still see it with some people. I won't mention them, but I see them on TV who will hit the wrong word for no reason whatsoever. And I always go, I bet they were in radio at some, or they're still doing radio. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing where you don't have to accentuate all the wrong words. Yes. And occasionally you can do things. I was doing Lorraine Kelly's show this morning, and it is quite funny. Sometimes if you're going into the break, I occasionally will do it in a slightly Mickey takey, and it's all coming up right here with Lorraine on ITV1, sometimes like that, which is just for me, just having a bit of a giggle. So it's a funny thing like that. But yeah, there's so many different styles. And again, if you're hosting an event in the theatre, it depends. I remember doing a musical summer holiday at the Hammersmith Apollo. And, I think it holds about 5,000 people. And it was Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer, two great comedians who'd played there. And they'd said to me, you're going to have to realize that everything has to be really big, because it has to register. Because like me looking at you just now and doing that, or if my expression choose that, for people listening in radio, I'm doing a slightly angry face or whatever. Yes. But of course, when you've got 5,000 people, you have to be huge. huge and big. For it
Yes.
so again, it's almost like reading the room that people would say nowadays. It's reading the size of the room, reading exactly what kind of show it is. I went back to acting class here in LA for about 3 years, and we were doing a scene from Moulin Rouge, the musical that had Ewan McGregor, and I was playing Ewan McGregor's part in this scene that we were doing. And the kind of precede version of the story was that my acting coach stopped the scene and said, you're not big here. What is it? And I said, well, I think as a British acting thing that we're frightened about being over the top, being too big. And he said to me, look, imagine you're doing this movie for real. You're on a soundstage in Australia. There's like a 200-foot elephant. There's this. What exactly does the expression over the top mean? And I said, well, over the top of the scene, and he said, yeah, so where is the scene here? And the scene is like so high, you couldn't ever be over the top of it. So again, those were lessons that I apply to life, and sometimes to even an interview. You can be interviewing someone who is not that kind of like comedic person. You can spar with somebody sometimes that is very funny and is very big, and you have to match their energy. It's fun. I mean, it's an absolutely fun way of just doing the whole thing.
And you mentioned that you were doing Lorraine Kelly this morning, but you have the
Yes.
luxury of being in LA, where you stay up late rather than having to get up early to be on breakfast
Absolutely.
telly.
Oh yeah. My on-air broadcasting time can be from 10 o'clock here, which is 6 in the morning in the UK, and then that will go right through. Lorraine's show will finish at 2 in the morning here. And then if I've got Australian TV to do, or New Zealand, that can be at 4 in the morning. It can be 5 in the morning. It can be any time. But I've always much preferred being the late guy. And I don't know whether it's just because I always thought show business was that you stayed up late.
Yeah.
You worked, you did gigs, you were in the theatre, whatever. Even when I was DJing, you're doing the clubs and things. And I remember being offered the breakfast show at Radio Clyde, and which, of course, for most stations probably still is, that breakfast show was a big thing. And I did it for a week and said, look, I'll do it for a week. I said, I really don't think I want to do this. I'm going to do it for a week just out of respect that you've asked me to do it. And by the end of the week, I was like, nope, don't like this at all. Do not like getting up early. So yes, I'm Mr. Showbiz, as in I like working late at night and getting up late.
Yes. Are there any projects or areas of the entertainment industry that you haven't done yet but would like to, or have you done pretty much everything by now?
No, there's always loads of things to do. I'd love to go back into doing some more acting again. I'd like to do a really serious role. I mean, it was funny that there was that great police drama Taggart that went on for many years, and I really wanted to go into that and be like the bad guy in it. So I'd love to have done something like that. I'd still love to do something like that, and do a really nice, meaty, serious role. But I'm lucky that I've had a chance to do so many things. I'm in the middle of. I've written 3 books with a lovely lady, Shari Lowe, and we're in the middle of writing another book. In fact, we've got a deadline that's got to be finished by November so that it can come out next year. I'm involved in a musical project at the moment with a very big name that I can't say anything about, but that's something different. I've just written a Christmas song with an Emmy, I'm not an Emmy, a Grammy winner out here. So that'll be interesting to see. Won't be this Christmas, but maybe next Christmas that I'll see something. So I'm always dabbling. That's the great thing. I think it's what keeps you, very much young at heart and also fresh.
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing. You want to really keep doing things. You want to keep reinvigorating yourself, and just, again, it's, new technology, whether it's AI, whether it's TikTok, whether it's anything, it's like embracing all these things. And I think that's what keeps you current. That's, I think I always say TV with a lot of people. And, they'll say, well, why do you think they've said this, or why have they done this documentary? And I always say, for them, it's to keep them current. It's to keep them there. And my way of keeping myself current is to be on top of all the things, and to be aware of the things, and to be be interested in it as well. Whatever music it is, or to even think, well, it's not really for me, but I get it. I understand why it's popular, why they're popular. I don't have to like it, but I think you do have to understand it.
For you, I suppose you've always been covering the story. And
yes.
With all these projects, do you feel like you get to be the story a little bit?
A little bit, but I still much prefer not being the story. I really like covering the story. And I like also, I like presenting just the facts. Occasionally, with Lorraine, I will give an opinion in something. But it's only my opinion, I would say, is hopefully to just draw the curtain back a little bit here to explain why something may well have happened, or this is what the possible end result is. I like doing that. I like dissecting it. And also, I write with a friend of mine, Alan Stewart, and we love deconstructing comedy and humor and, like reverse engineering jokes. If he's doing a pantomime and he goes, I need a joke about show jumping, and then you go, okay, so we start with, and then, so it's almost like you have the punchline and you work your way back and reverse engineer the joke. So I love things like that. I love dissecting it. And I just love what I do. And I also love going to see movies. I love going to the theater. I love listening to music. I still have a huge love affair with the whole of the business.
And how do you think your own approach to broadcasting and the other things that you do have evolved over the years? Do you hope that you've improved in some way?
Oh, good. I hope I've improved. I'm convinced I have. But my mum always said, I think, when I was a kid, and I've often said it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I really understood it. And she said, whenever I go off, say I was going off to play a football match, or I was going off to do a play or something, she would say, as I left the house, just do your best, son. That's all you can do. And I'd be like, yeah. And I'd always walk away thinking, of course I'm going to do why, like what? I'm not going to do my best. And then I realized what that actually meant and all the ways that you can do your best. Do your research. Are you, from a football point of view, did you get enough sleep? Are you training enough? Are you training hard enough? Are you really trying hard in the game, when it's not going well? In theatre, am I doing my vocal warm-ups? Am I singing? Am I trying this? Am I trying new techniques? Am I taking a joke that worked okay, trying to make it even better? So it was that simple thing of, do your best. That's all you can do. Because once you've done that, and especially here in what can be a very cruel city, Toby, is that, if you go for an audition and it is kind of like next, you go, okay, and it's people say, don't take it personally. But of course you do take it personally because it's you. Yeah. But the simple fact of the matter for me is that if I've, listened to Dear Old Mum, if I've done my best, if I've gone in and I've done my best, that's it. I really cannot do any better than that. So, that's it. It's up to them to change whatever they think. But I've done my best, and that's all I can do.
Well, what sort of things are coming up that you can tell us about in the kind of short term? And when are you next on the telly and all that?
I'm next on the telly Monday morning, which is Sunday night for me here.
Oh, yes.
As I said, we've written, Sherry and I have written 3 books, The Rise, The Catch, The Fall. They're all out at the moment with a big production company here. We've written a pilot script. So fingers crossed that what is basically a Hollywood trilogy will be made into a TV series. That could happen next year, next decade, never. I'm very realistic when it comes to these things. And then we're writing a new book, a 4th book, which will feature some of the characters that were in the first 3 as more sort of cameo roles. So it's all a brand new story with brand new people. So that's really exciting. That's got to be finished by November. That'll be out next year. TV wise, I'm lucky as well. I get to do lots of voiceovers. If someone's unfortunate enough to call up American Express, you get me saying, thank you for calling American Express.
Oh, I'll try that.
So I have, so that's a lovely job that I every month I sit in my little studio here, and I'm so lucky. I'm right up by the Hollywood sign. I have a TV studio, an actual TV radio studio in my house. How ridiculously lucky is that? And, as a kid who started out in radio, and I've said, how much it was such a great grounding to do radio and to do everything. I started off as basically the studio factotum as a kid. I would do everything. I'd run in with the teas, the coffees, the photocopy the scripts, record stuff, edit stuff. And, I had this thing one time at Love Street in Paisley, the home of St. Mirren. And I was rigging the football ground. It was a horrible, wet Saturday afternoon in Glasgow. The rain was chucking it down. It was like sleet, hail. And I was trying to get the mast up in the radio car and trying to push it up, and it wouldn't quite work, and it kept falling down. And I remember at one point lying on top of, and I had my little thin Radio Clyde jacket, because you were so proud to have this jacket that kind of got you in places. It was, Radio Clyde, and you come. And it was, I remember sobbing, not crying, but just like this on top of the radio van, thinking, what is this for? What am I doing with it? What am I doing with my life? And now when I go downstairs in the house here and flick a switch and the lights go on and the TV camera goes on and the microphone goes on, and I think, oh my goodness me, that's what it was for. And so every single time, and this is not like a showbiz story, every time I flick that switch, I right away will think of being that kid on top of the radio car van. It's the truth. It genuinely, that's everything, every time it happens.
Wow, that's inspirational, because I guess there's a lot of people who are maybe in that situation at the moment where they think, why am I doing this? It's hopefully most of the time to lead them somewhere where they want to be.
Yeah. And also, Johnny Carson, who was a great chat show host here, always said, whatever skill you learn, you will use it at some point. And it's a bit like every joke you've heard, at some point, you probably use that joke or shoehorn it into something. It's a bit like if someone says to you, do you want to learn to ride a unicycle? It's like, not really thought about it. But if you do it, guaranteed that at some point, you'll be doing a TV show and someone will be saying, well, we want to do this piece to camera from a circus. It'd be great if you could juggle or ride a unicycle. Yes. It's funny, all the things that will come back that you just never, ever thought that you would use again. But again, it's just that great thing. It's like stocking up the cupboard with a whole host of, fun toys.
Yeah.
And you just never know when you're going to, it's like pull something out of the huge reservoir of stories, of jokes, of whatever talent there may be or skills. It's just that great thing. And I think as you get older, and obviously you're adding to it, that's the thing, is to keep adding to it. Never ever think I've got enough, tricks here. It's, there's always extra things to add in.
Well, where are we able to keep up to date with you? Do you have a website and social media and all that?
I do. I'm on Twitter. I'm on, X now. I'm on.
Yes.
I'm on, pretty much you get me in everything. At the Ross King is me. And the reason it's not at the Ross King, it's at the Ross King. The reason is that, oh, there we are. There's the doorbell already. At the Ross King is because I was in a lift in Glasgow one time, and there was a couple got in the lift, and the girl turned to me and said, look, that's the Ross King. And the guy was like, yeah. And I was like, I'm not on the TV. I can hear you. I can hear what you're saying. And they said, and they went, it's the Ross King. So that's why I thought, I quite like that funny thing of being the Ross King. So there we are.
Well, many thanks
for
pleasure. Talking to us today. It's been great to have you here.
Lovely to, and thank you. And good luck with your career as well, Toby.
Thank you.
You've done a great job. Well done.